Hi, Matt Tyrrell here from Borderline Gaming, also known as the Mayor and current Australian Master. I'm going to do this new little series, a tactics series on Nighthaunt, a allegiance that I've grown to love quite recently from a competitive point of view. I've always loved the models. I've always been a Death player, so I've always loved Death, but I've really been enjoying playing the army lately. It's been a lot of fun. I love the thought process behind playing the army. I love the challenge of the army. And I love the interaction with your opponents with the army. You can turn up to a game and people don't expect you to win, or they don't expect you to run over the top of them and destroy them like you would if you rocked up with Flesh Eater Courts or OBR, Zinch, Seraphon, whatever it is. I had Nether Eels. So I decided I wanted to do a little tactics series for Nighthaunt from a tournament perspective, a competitive perspective. I feel the army can be quite competitive in the current meta and with the current battle plans. So I plan on doing a few different episodes of this, mainly instead of doing one long video where people have got to search through for what they want, I'll just do a number of small videos and people can just go to what they need, what they want to work out, what they want to learn. And at the end of the day, this is only my opinion. This isn't the be-all, end-all of Nighthaunt. You can play it how you want to play it, and I hope you do. I hope you just take a few little things from this. You don't have to do everything I say. You don't have to copy what I say. As I say, this is just my opinion. And I, coming from a better player than just your average Joe, I'm hoping I can impart some of my wisdom on all of you out there. So tonight's episode is just going to be on allegiance abilities. So I'm going to take you through the Nighthaunt allegiance abilities and we'll go from there. So let's just bring them up on the screen. So the first one is Aura of Dread. Now this is just another little inconspicuous one that a lot of people don't really tend to think much of, but can be actually quite good in the whole scheme of things. So you subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units while they are within 6 of any friendly Nighthaunt units. So with the way I tend to play this army, my units never really wipe out my opponent's units, but this is where this can come in handy, just making 1 extra unit run to Battle Shock, or even just making your opponent take a Battle Shock test. A lot of new armies have quite high bravery, maybe bravery 8 to 10. So if you say for bravery 8, you kill 2 models, brings them down to a 6 for Battle Shock, that they don't even need to take a Battle Shock test, but being neg 1 to their bravery brings them down to a 7, they lose 2 models. On a roll of a 6, they lose another model. So this can be quite huge, especially paired with, say, Lady Olander, for example, who makes an extra model flee in the Battle Shock phase if there's a failed Battle Shock test. And even with the shooting abilities of Banshees and Lady Olander herself, making a neg 1 bravery because it says characteristic, that works well with them as well in the shooting phase. So it's quite a little inconspicuous thing, making neg 1 bravery. It's not huge, but it does add an extra little bit to the army, which helps overall winning the game. The next one is Deathless Spirits. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Nighthaunt model from a unit wholly within 12 of your general or friendly Nighthaunt hero. On a 6+ wound or mortal wound is negated. This is just your generic death save. All death have this. The difference being you have to be wholly within. So it's one of those things. it can be quite difficult to play with at first. Knowing where your holy withins are can be quite challenging at the start, but after a few games you tend to sort of measure this as you're moving models and always have things in range. The next one is probably one of our best allegiance abilities, and probably one of the best allegiance abilities in the game, to be honest, in my opinion. So from the underworlds they come. So instead of setting up a Nighthaunt unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up in the underworlds as a reserve unit. You can set up one unit in the underworlds for each unit you set up on the battlefield. So you have to set up one on the battlefield first, and then you can put up one on in the underworlds. So only half your army can be in the underworlds. At the end of your movement phase, you can set up any of these units more than 9 inches from any enemy models. This counts as their move for that turn. Any units which are not set up on the battlefield before the start of the 4th battle round are slain. So by your turn 3, you've got to set them up, otherwise they're dead. Now this is one of the, as I was saying, this is a fantastic ability. Especially in the current meta, we've got a lot more shooting armies, a lot more magic heavy armies. This can really get into their backlines and target those heroes, those shooting units, or even just setting up your important stuff off the board. So the heroes you want to keep alive, or that big unit of Grimghast Reapers, or whatever it is, that Mongol, whatever you want, put it in the underworlds. Your opponent has no hope of shooting it off first turn or doing a heap of damage through spells, because there's nothing there for them to hit. So yeah, I use this in every one of my games. I tend to take more drops in my army just so I can use more stuff in the underworlds. I always like to, my go-to at the moment is put a Mongol and a hero in the underworlds and drop them in your opponent's, normally like behind their flank, their back of the board, and try and get the charge into their flank and really start messing them up turn 1 if they give you first turn, or if you take first turn. And then moving on to their turn, they have a big decision to make, whether they send quite a bit of their army back to deal with that unit, especially a Mongol, you need quite a bit to kill it, or do they move up the board and score objectives. I find either of these decisions from your opponent is the wrong decision, in my opinion. If they do decide to move their army back to deal with your Mongol, that means they're potentially not scoring for that turn and putting that unit out of combat for another turn, because it takes that time to move up the board into reach of combat for the following turn. So that is the wrong decision. If the other wrong decision is if they don't worry about the Mongol and they just move up to score objectives, it means they've got a Mongol and another hero or whatever you've dropped down running rampant in their backlines, and he can really start doing damage. So I find this is a really good ability. The other great reason for using it is your opponent will always set up their army in a defensive manner of trying to stop that deep striking, that underworlds unit popping up and taking out key heroes, etc. So if you're playing against Khorne, more tribes, whatever it is, if it's a melee heavy army, they're always going to put a unit or two right up the back to protect their squishy heroes, or protect their heroes from being held up in combat, or whatever it is. So potentially that unit, that 1 or 2 units that they're putting back there, they're going to be stuck there once again for another turn. If they do kill your Mongol or whatever, it doesn't matter too much, because then they're out of the game for a turn or two, because they're not doing anything. So yeah, and otherwise, if you're not using the underworlds, melee heavy army, light corn, light more tribes, they just set up everything on their deployment line and just run forward, and then smack into your army and wipe you out. As I said earlier, we're not known for having a lot of wounds, so we can die pretty easy. And also, the other use I use the underworlds for is objective grabbing, and it's awesome for this. Especially, I like to take a few units of 10 chain ras, or whatever it is. It could even be a big unit of 40 chain ras, but using the underworlds like this, if you're given first turn and look, you know your opponent has a good army that's going to take objectives, just smack down a heap of units of chain ras on objectives and grab those points early on and really make your opponent have to work hard to get the objectives back. I even tend to, sometimes if I've got multiple units of 10 chain ras, I'll set up one unit of 10 on the very back edge of an objective and the other unit of 10 on the very front edge of the objective. So when your opponent moves up and they charge, they're only getting into combat with that front 10, leaving the back 10 unharmed and most probably still holding that objective for that turn. And I like to use screens quite a lot, so being able to just drop down stuff wherever I need it, drop them 9 inches from your opponent, just as like 10 chain ras for 80 points is an awesome little speed bump for your opponent to have to deal with while you're scoring objectives for your next turn if you've held them up. So yeah, this is how I use the underworlds, and I feel it can be very good. The next one is Feed on Terror. So each time an enemy unit fails battle shock test, pick one friendly Nighthaunt hero within 6 of that enemy unit, heal 1 wound that has been allocated to that hero. This is another one of those abilities that at first read, at first glance, it seems a bit meh, doesn't seem that good. A lot of people forget about it. But I find this, the more I remember it in games, the more it makes a difference to my games. Healing 1 wound from battle shock failed within 6 can be huge. Considering we have such low wound heroes, it can mean the difference between a dead hero and a live hero. Say for example, your 5 wound Spirit Torment or your 5 wound Guardian of Souls, whatever it is, say they're down to 3 wounds, someone fails battle shock test, they go up to 4 wounds, your opponent has next turn, they cast their D3 damage spell, they roll 3 mortal wounds, you're still alive on 1 wound. If you hadn't healed that 1 wound, your hero's dead. So just that 1 wound healing, it can be so good. It's not, as I said, it's not a huge ability, but with Nighthaunt having such low wound heroes, it just keeps those heroes alive when you need it. So the next one is Wave of Terror. If you make an unmodified charge roll of 10 plus for a friendly Nighthaunt unit, it can fight immediately after you complete the charge move. This does not stop the unit from being picked to fight in the combat phase of the same turn. This is on par with the underworlds. This is another fantastic ability. What it doesn't say here, and it has been FAQ'd, is you get to pile in an attack and then pile in an attack again. So this means a lot of people don't realize this, but units like OBR, for example, they get rerolls in the combat phase. This is in the charge phase, so you can bypass their rerolls to save. And a lot of armies have the same mechanic where they get rerolls to save in the combat phase, or they ignore wounds in combat phase, or whatever it is, or they get a plus bonus to their save in the combat phase. This negates all of that because it's still in the charge phase. So this can be really huge. It also takes our units that do, like a lot of the Nighthaunt units do below average damage per points to what other armies can, this will make a below average unit do above average for what their points are. So at just getting one or two of these off a game can really change the flow of the game and can make a huge difference to the game. It's not something you want to rely on, but it's something that if you get it, you want to make the most of it. So it's always good. I find in some of my army builds, I'll have plenty of command points where I'm not spent. The only time I'm spending them is on re-rolling charges. Sometimes I'll have a 3-inch charge, I'll roll a 6 and I'll re-roll it trying to get a 10 plus, because that 10 plus can change the game. If I roll double ones, who cares? I don't charge, but I'd rather try and get a 10 plus just to make the difference. So that's Wave of Terror. And last but not least is the command ability, Spectral Summons. You can use this command ability at the start of your movement phase. If you do so, pick a friendly Nighthaunt unit that is on the battlefield, remove that unit from the battlefield, and then set up wholly within 12 of your general and more than 9 from enemy models. This counts as their move for that movement phase. Now this is probably our third most important ability in the book. It can be really fantastic. Depending on who your general is, if you've got the Dreadblade Harrow, it means you can teleport him, because he teleports at the start of the movement phase. He can teleport across the board, and then for a command point, he can teleport a unit with him. Really good for taking objectives, really good for hitting your opponent from behind or whatever you need, or even just getting out of a pickle. I don't tend to run a Dreadblade Harrow as my general, so I tend to use this more as a get my model out of a sticky situation and bring it to where I want it. Say for example, I have Deep Strike my Mongol in my opponent's back half, it's charged in, it's killed a unit, another unit's charged it, done a heap of wounds to the Mongol, maybe the Mongols were left on 2 wounds or something, and I know for a fact that Mongol's probably going to die if I just leave it in combat for the turn. So what I'll do, I'll spend that command point, I'll pick that Mongol up from the back lines, bring it over to my side, put it in range of a Spirit Torment. Hopefully in that Battle Shock phase I'd killed 3 models that turn, and I can heal him D3, and then he gets into combat his next turn and heals another D3 or whatever it is. He can be fully healed back up in a turn or 2, and I haven't lost that model, and the unit he was in combat is stuck on the other side of the board doing nothing for a turn or 2. Flip side of that coin, for example, again, my Mongol's charged in and it's wiped out a unit of, say, 20 clan rats or whatever it is, and he's got nothing within 24 inches of him, so he's not going to get in combat for a turn. You can spend that command point, bring him back over to near your general. He can be set up 9 inches away from the enemy and try and go for that 9-inch charge, possibly get a 10. He's piling, attacking twice. So the Spectral Summons is a really good ability, combined with all our other abilities like Nighthaunt, really excel in the movement phase and being able to get around the board and score objectives. And it just using that to the best of your ability will definitely help you win games. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the first episode. So we will finish up there, and our next episode will be on up to command traits, and we'll go through that with the spell lore and possibly go through artifacts and all that as well. So thanks for watching the first episode. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, even subscribe. More people that like it, more people that watch it, means more people will get to see it. So thanks very much, and we'll talk again soon.